Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Welcome back to the Big Life Podcast. Neal Oates Jr., Robin Lewis. How are you doing today?
Hey, doing great, Neal. Man, it's all anytime I get together with Neal Oates Jr. and our listeners, it's a good day for me.
And so I agree. And today, Rob, I know you and we're going to dive into a topic that not only so many other people wrestle with, but they don't always have the language for. We wrestle with this as well. And so we're going to be talking about the second mountain. And you know what I mean when I say the second mountain. The first mountain is all about achievement, the hustle, the goals, if I just get there, then I'll feel fulfilled. And for a while that works. But what happens when you climb the mountain, stand at the top, and still feel like something's missing? That's the second mountain that we're talking about.
And Neal, I think that's one of the most honest moments that a person can face when they realize that what they thought would bring satisfaction only brought a temporary relief. You know what I mean? You get the promotion, you hit the sales number, you buy that dream house, and then that quiet little voice says, is this all there is? And that moment is the invitation, Neal, to what you're referring to, the second mountain.
Robin, you say the invitation to the second mountain. And so we're going to look at this in our conversation today, but that invitation does not feel like a welcoming invitation. It feels almost like, man, if I'm successful, why do I feel like a loser? Why do I still feel a yearning for something else? And so you chose that word invitation, Robin. That lets me know that you think a little bit differently than the rest of us, sir.
Hey, but sometimes it's looking back and realizing, that journey. And so, come on, let's talk about it.
Okay, so we're going to paint this clearly. The first mountain is about proving. And when I say proving, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So it's about proving, maybe to yourself, your family, colleagues, or society. You hustle or you work to prove that you belong or that you can do this thing. You accumulate achievements like badges or titles. But that second mountain, it's about becoming. So the first one is about proving. The second one is about becoming. It's about alignment, meaning, and building something that really matters. Instead of chasing significance through external markers, we find significance in living out our purpose. And I know that's a word that means the world to Robin and I. And if you're here with us on the Big Life Podcast, purpose is really what the Big Life is about.
Yes, and it's so true. So that second mountain is tied together with purpose. And here's the really cool thing. Climbing that second mountain doesn't erase the first one, right? It builds on it. So that's what I mean by looking back, Neal. A lot of times, when we're in the second mountain journey, we're realizing that we actually were prepared by the first mountain for where we are now. Everything you learned on that first climb, right? Maybe it's discipline, or maybe it's resilience or strategy. That all becomes a tool that you can now use in service of something bigger.
Okay, so Rob, I could tell already that our viewpoints, and ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we're having this conversation is Robin and we both have experienced the success, right? We've gotten to the top of that first mountain. We're like, yeah, we did it. I'm a bad man, only to find out, is this all there is? And so now we're going to roll into this part, and we really going to start looking at the crisis that starts to climb. And you're like, oh man, crisis. Now, first, Robin is using nice words like invitation. Neal is coming here with ugly words like crisis. And so here's what I've noticed, Robin, is that very few people start that second mountain voluntarily, right? That invitation that says, come on, it's not a voluntary move. Usually there's some type of disruption, burnout, health scare, the end of a relationship, or more often than not, simply that gnawing feeling of emptiness after a win. You know, that little thing here that says, is this all there is?
And I'm with you on that, right? And I'm glad that you are pointing that out because, you know, I've heard people refer to that as the valley between the mountains, right? It can feel like loss, you know, and oftentimes it is, but it's really a threshold. That's the point that I am focusing on. The valley is where you stop and you ask, who am I really? Right? What do I truly value? So that's the part that I was focusing on, Neal. It's not to take away from the fact that it's usually a valley moment that brings us to even think about climbing that next mountain. But the beautiful thing is when we start asking these questions to our listeners, who am I really? What do I truly value? And what am I willing to let go of in order to create a different story? Right, Neal?
Hey, so Robin, and so really quickly, here's what I hear when I hear you talk about between the two mountains. So many times I think of a valley as going down into a dark, ugly, deep thing, right? But oftentimes, flat land between two mountains is still a valley, right? So it
Yeah.
could be that place for me to rest. It could be that place for what we love to do, reflect, for us to learn from that first climb. It doesn't necessarily mean that we've gone backwards, but maybe it's just a time for us to regroup. Maybe it is that time that you talk about so frequently where we can go in and assess what we did on that first climb. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't starting the new climb, it's releasing the old mountain, right? It's releasing that success, that identity that was tied to the title that we received at the top of the first mountain, the approval that came from outperforming others or even our own expectation, or that old mountain could be the comfort of being known for what we've accomplished. And that's one that I have had to personally overcome at different points in my life when I have challenged, succeeded, and then said, no, I like being known for this thing here. But then that little voice said, but Neal, you're supposed to be so much more. But that would require me to do something new, something scary, something different. It would require me to go back into this land of obscurity where no one knows me in this new field. And the question that you ask, am I willing, or what am I willing to let go of to create this new life, this new thing?
Yes, and that second mountain, it gets deeper. You go bigger, you go broader. There are things about the second mountain that have a little different mindset shift to it. You know, the first mountain teaches you about achievement, for example, but the second mountain teaches you about depth, right? The first mountain teaches you how to climb. The second mountain teaches you why to climb, right? And so these are the shifts that start to take place that I want our listeners to hear. The first mountain gives you trophies. The second gives you transformation. And so I want our listeners to see the difference because they might identify that they're already in the second mountain, or maybe they're in the valley, or maybe they're still climbing that first mountain. And to understand, if they can see that there's going to be more to the journey, they can help get some of these things wherever they are on their journey.
So Robin, you do such a great job of painting these word pictures because I sit here and initially when I think, all right, yeah, I know how to climb a mountain. I know how to do this thing. I know how to be successful, but why do I want to be successful? Why am I doing this? Like two totally different journeys. Now, it's important to know how to do it, as you mentioned, but the why behind it. And it has almost become a cliche in our day and age now. Know your why. But that really is what it comes down to. And then I know you love the idea of from trophies to transformation. And that's why we're here on the Big Life podcast, because it really is all about transformation. It doesn't matter how many trophies we amass, how many titles, how many accolades we get if we have not experienced that transformation. And Robin, what I've learned personally is that often it's the second mountain where you stop asking, how far can I go? And we start asking, how far can I take others with me? And what you and I believe is that that second mountain becomes less about me and more about we. And I look at this Big Life podcast as my second mountain. I look at this Big Life podcast as no longer doing it for Neal, but how far can we go while taking others? Can we not focus on the accolades and of the sales or the compensation? And can we really look at transformation? And that's a beautiful thing about having a climbing partner on this second mountain, such as Robin. And we'll talk about those partners a little bit later.
Yeah, and it's so true, sir. There's so much that comes to my mind by what you just said. It's about who I am becoming, right? And is my shifting from it being all about me to how can I serve and help and add value and empower others? And am I really about that? And am I becoming the person who is actually living that out? And so this is inner work. This is work on me. This is work on Robin for that second mountain, right? Neal, this is where it gets real. The second mountain is not just about external change, then, in other words, it's about inner change, transformation. You start looking at things that maybe you've ignored in the past. Maybe there are wounds that you're still carrying that you haven't addressed. Certain times, Neal, you and I have been transparent with our listeners. I've shared there are things that I personally recognize that sometimes, I've just given a quick example to our listeners. Sometimes on the pickleball court, I recognize that my response to somebody's call wasn't really thinking about them. It was thinking about me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that I had to kind of look at myself and ask, where is that coming from? And finding out that there are things that maybe I still had back there that I had not addressed.
Yeah.
What fears still control me? What fears still control me, right? I still have times. There is a sort of a silent voice in Robin's head that if I'm not careful and intentional about it, that silent voice is a negative voice.
Yeah.
And so I have to be very intentional about what are some of those fears that might still be controlling me. And what beliefs have I outgrown, but I still hold on to? I'm still living by them. What beliefs have I outgrown? So here we're talking about inner work, Neal. And this is hard work. And a lot of times, this type of work doesn't happen instantly, number one. And number two, I think this type of work typically requires us to sort of make ourselves accountable to somebody else, right? Because a lot of times we're going to kid ourselves and we're not going to see some of these things. And this is where you talked about, stepping back and reflecting. And, so we have to kind of stop and be very intentional about looking inside.
So, Robin, you're throwing these questions out to us, and they're hitting me like what is it? Jab, jab, hook, uppercut, all of those buttons on the control panel.
Hey, let's be real, brothers, right?
What fears still control me? Like, there are some fears, and as you ask the question, right? So of course we prepare for the episode and we do our due diligence, and we're like, okay, I like this. We bouncing ideas off of each other, but it's not until you're speaking to the audience and me being part of this audience right now, I'm like, man, what fears still control me? And then the last question that you asked hit me really hard right now. What beliefs have I outgrown, but I still live by, right? The stuff that we know. And especially, and here's what gets me, Rob, is you and I being men of faith, you and I being Christians, believing in God's word, believing what Jesus Christ says about us, but then me still living by beliefs that don't align with what's said about Neal. And so I'm sitting here
and jabbing me back, aren't you?
And now I'm sitting here thinking like, man, that's the stuff that before I climbed the first mountain, I would believe. But in order for me to reach the peak, the pinnacle, I had to change those things, but I'm still living by it. I still know, hey, I know it's not real, but my actions today, as we record, my actions last night or yesterday or last week would show, man, you're still bound by that thing. You're still holding on to it. And then the question is why? and then goes back to your previous question. What am I willing to let go of to climb this second mountain? So, man, I'm getting goosebumps as we're here. And here's why. Because the inner work, Robin, is not optional. We don't get to opt out of that inner renovation, right? That inner change. We can't say, yeah, I want to climb the second mountain, but I want to do it being the same person that I was or that I am. It's not optional, it's essential. The second mountain demands a lighter load. And here's what that means. It means that I, Neal, I can't carry bitterness. I can't carry comparison. I can't carry old definitions of success on this climb up the second mountain. I have to decide what gets left in that valley. So when I'm after that first mountain and when I'm in that valley or that flat land and I'm reflecting, I'm asking, is this going to serve me on my next climb? Is my ego going to benefit me as I go from trophies to transformation or not? And so that's where I find myself more often than I would like to admit. And then I'm having to, because you mentioned, I lie to myself. I'm a great salesperson. I will sell myself on anything. I would go back and say, Robin, here's where I was, here's where I am, here's where I want to be. And Robin is going to say, Neal, do you think that this is going to help you get to where you want to be? No, but I like it, but it makes me feel comfortable. Okay, Neal, how bad do you want this thing? Oh, man. Come on, Robin. We're rolling today,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's a part of the journey, and that's a part that Neil and I always talk about, that we are in this journey with you, because I don't think that ever ends. That we're always a work in progress. That's the reality, and that's why growth is a lifelong journey. But the beautiful part, Neil, of what you were just describing is that when we do that work, the climb becomes joyful again. That we have joy. It's challenging, but it's more meaningful. We're no longer chasing approval. We're living in alignment with who our calling, our purpose, our values. And that's a beautiful thing.
And so it is beautiful. So even in all of that, and I love the fact that you mentioned, yes, it's going to be challenging, but it's meaningful. And for me now, wanting to live in alignment, it gets me through those hard times, maybe through the critique or the criticism or what we just call feedback, right? That learning, that first attempt in learning when we fail. And so I want to look at the relationships that matter, because without these, I believe that Neal never attempts to climb that second mountain because I can become complacent. But something else shifts on the second mountain, and that's going to be your relationships. On the first mountain, in my experience, you often network to get ahead. Guilty, right? On the second, you build community, not to get ahead, but to go deeper. And this is where you mentioned earlier in this episode about that second mountain is about depth. So we're no
Yeah.
longer networking to get ahead, we're building community to go deeper.
Yes, that's what brought you and I together, Neil. That's the reality. You start craving conversations that feed your soul, not just your goals, right? You surround yourself with people who sharpen you and challenge you and remind you of who you really are. And they're on this journey of doing the inner work, and they're on this journey of living into their calling and their purpose. And there's something that it does to you about being around people like that. And so when you're out there and you see the signs of that and you can connect with somebody, I think that's what happened with you and I, right?
Absolutely. So, Robin, check this out. An audience, I want you all to hear this. Neal, when he was climbing his first mountain, I did not want people who would sharpen me. I did not want people who would challenge me. I only wanted people who would encourage me and tell me how great I am and that everything is working. And if it didn't work out, it was someone else's fault. But then I quickly realized that those people would not be that their attitudes, that their energy, that the activities were not serving me to bring me up. They would just keep me where I was for a moment, and then they would result in me moving backwards. And so when I'm talking to my clients, Robin, here's what I'm telling them: that your second mountain tribe won't be as big as your first mountain crowd. And that's okay, right? It really is okay, because we believe in quality. And here, what we're talking about on that second mountain is that quality really does beat quantity. And so we want to have those quality relationships, that community, and that's going to be impactful for us as we climb that mountain. And so, Robin, before we continue, I want to ask you, what was your experience when it came to relationships in first mountain climb and second mountain climb? Did you do it right? Did you make some mistakes? Did you have to go back and say, all right, maybe I don't need 40 people with me on this second mountain. Maybe if I had a solid 6, it would work. I'm just curious about your experience.
Oh man, it's been mistakes all along the way, brother. I wish I had strategy like what you're talking about there, even to the number. But I think, for me, it's been about stepping out. It's been about being more intentional about putting myself in communities where people are either ahead of me or certainly like-minded in what we've been talking about this morning. And as I have done so, I have made mistakes. Maybe there are relationships that I should have jumped on and been more intentional about developing that I didn't. Or maybe I entered into some relationships still thinking more about what's in it for me rather than how I can serve and how I can learn and how I can grow. And, so it's been really trial and error, to be honest with you. But where it's gotten me to that place where I'm more intentional now
Hmm.
about putting myself in places where, that tribe is. So
So,
I've made
so,
mistakes along the way, brother, but I've gotten to that place now where I'm really more intentional about that.
So my ask is this, because I know you and we love growth. We love the idea of growth and we love the desired result, right? We like the end process, but growth doesn't always feel comfortable. Especially you talk about putting yourself out there, right? Putting yourself in new rooms, putting yourself and building relationships with those who may be further along, who care about you, who know more than you do, or who have different experience. So what does that feel like for you? Are you excited about it? And I'm really am asking you the question because for me, I'm not always excited about the discomfort. I'm not always wanting to say, yay, I get to go in here with people who are going to tell me lovingly that I'm okay, or that my actions have been mediocre, or that there's more and better, and not someone who's going to stroke my ego. So what's that feeling like for you as you maybe level up those rooms? And we even talked about prior to the episode recording some things that we're learning, and we thought we've been good, right? And now one or two little shifts, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we love you, we love the energy, but could you do this?" So what's that feeling like for you, Robin?
Yeah, another great question, Neil. I think you're serving our listeners by asking a question like that. Because for me, Neil, the reality has been that it's definitely uncomfortable. Sometimes I wonder, why am I even doing this? And sometimes I really have to speak to myself and remind myself, like it's things like, hey, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? John Maxwell teaches that. And so I think it's been more of, the discomfort has been there to answer your question. It's still there, but I remind myself, and then after being in that environment, that community for a while, it's obvious to me that it's the right place to be. So
Yeah.
after a while, it becomes obvious. But oftentimes I'm working through the discomfort. I'm uncomfortable. I'm being stretched. I'm putting myself out there where I feel awkward. I feel like maybe I don't belong. The more that I put myself and the more that I'm a part of that is the more that I realize that I am in the right place, number one. And so I think it's a combination of understanding that I need to take that journey in order for me to live into my purpose, right? You and I have done an episode before where we talked about be so useful that they can't ignore you. And the
Right.
only way for me to get to that place where I become so useful is going through the stretch, the discomfort. So great
So
question. And that's what I've found for me. And I'm trusting it's probably the same for you.
it is absolutely the same for me. I just wanted to make sure that I was still with great company, right? So I was like, man, am I the only way? And I do want to point this out to the audience. that when you feel like you are the only one, more often than not, you are not the only one who feels this way, who's experiencing this thing. And so that's why I throw that out there, because I know Robin and I were going to be transparent with you, but we want you to understand that if you feel uneasy with growth, that's okay. That's expected. Robin and I have been doing this for decades and we still feel uncomfortable, but we understand that it is part of our growth, part of the process, part of the reason why we're here, and ultimately for our higher calling and our purpose. So, Robin, now we get to move into some fun, challenging stuff. And this is where you and I always, because it's not about us talking and people listening, it's about the transformation. And so, as we leave that first mountain, as we maybe find ourselves in the valley, preparing for the second climb, or we're already on that second climb, would you be willing to share maybe some practical steps that we could use to get us started on that second mountain?
Yeah, man. So I wrote some down for our listeners today, right? So we want some practical steps. If you find yourself that you're sensing this pull to that second mountain, these are some things that we think you can do. So number one is to take inventory, right? Write down what you thought success would feel like.
Robin, stop it, man. Why would you start right here? Because immediately that taking inventory, it's going to shine some light on us, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Exactly. And but we have to be real, right? The first step towards getting to where you want to go, sorry, is knowing where you want to go and then knowing where you are, right? It's like the GPS, right? Like you're starting here and this is where you want to go. And so take inventory, write down what you thought success would feel like, and then write down what you actually feel right now. And that gap is your starting point, right, Neil? That's
Oh,
kind of what we're
absolutely.
talking about there. The second thing here is to clarify your values. Identify the three values that you want to shape your next season. I think it's so important to really stop and consider what's important to you, what really matters. Not to somebody else, not to what others think you should, but what are your values, right? And then number three is to,
So, Robin, hold on right there. You mentioned identify the three values that shape your next season.
yeah,
So, in essence, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want you to miss this. Your values for the first mountain could have been, they may be fantastic values for that mountain, for that season, right? So, what Robin is saying, those values might change. Maybe you have one that is the same. You might have two that have changed because of this new mountain, this new season that you're going into. And so, once again, as Robin talked about that GPS, if our destination is going to be different, maybe we need different values, and that's going to show up in how we live out our lives, some decisions we make, some relationships, or the connections that we foster, the amount of education or learning that we go after. So it does not mean that your values, that your previous values were wrong. It means that those values might not be what's going to help achieve this new success.
yeah. And an important part that I want to encourage our listeners here is to write these down. I think oftentimes when I share this idea of clarifying your values to people, oftentimes they want to just kind of have their I know what my values are, and they kind of just have them in their mind. I want you to actually write them down, right? And because there's something about writing them down, you're really clarifying what and then you're narrowing it down, right? I said the top three. We might start with 50, but narrowing that down to the top three really kind of hones in on what's important to us right now. And yeah, that more than likely has changed, right? And so the third one is to redefine success. If success was no longer tied to like titles or money, what would it look like? That's the idea here. So you're redefining success and you're taking out the titles and the money part of it, and you're really kind of honing in on what would success look like for you. And the last one is to take small steps, like act on this, act soon. And what I mean there is don't wait for perfect clarity. Take unaligned step after you've done these sort of inventories, if you will. You take an inventory, what success you thought it would feel like, what it actually feels like now. You're clarifying your values and you're redefining success. After you've done all those, what we want you to do is to take take one step that is in alignment with with these thoughts. So that's
Absolutely,
my
Rob.
practical steps, Neil.
So that's some fantastic stuff. In fact, that as I listen and then we go into post production and then actually posting this episode, I get the privilege of working through this process numerous times. So I know that this is going to benefit me. But then I'm going to remind each of us to find your guide, your Sherpa, right? Find that person that's going to help you climb this second mountain. Because here's what we know, and this is coming from those who are smarter than us, those who have different experiences, but also in our own life's journey. The second mountain is best climbed with mentors, coaches, or peers who've walked it before us, right? And I think that can be humbling because it means that we need help. It means that I can't do this by myself, no matter how big the first mountain was or how quickly I was able to ascend to the top, right? This second mountain, mentors, coaches, peers who have been on the journey, they can help us see the path when it feels foggy, right? When I don't know what this idea of becoming is, right? I know what it feels like to prove myself. I know what that looks like. I know how to get titles. I know how to be the number one salesperson. I know how to be the best, whatever. But what does it mean to become a new, bigger, better, higher person? And so that's why we're encouraging you to find a coach. Robin and I, as coaches, have coaches. And so all of the best coaches have coaches. And so that's what I'm going to encourage you all to do. Find someone that you can take this climb with.
Yeah, right on. And so, a word of encouragement to our listeners today, that the second mountain is where your work feels like calling, where relationships are richer, and where giving feels better than getting. So it's really more about serving. It's really more about adding value to others and living into your calling and your purpose, the reason why you're here on this earth. So it's a beautiful thing. Be encouraged with that.
And here's what I love about what you just said, Robin, is that when you get to this point, the point that Robin was just talking about, where giving feels better than getting, where it's about relationships and rich relationships, we stop chasing happiness. And I know that the whole idea of the pursuit of happiness, we stop chasing happiness, we start creating significance. And that's a big word. That's impact. You wake up excited, not just to win the day, but really to invest in others, to give yourself away.
And Neil, that's when you realize that what the first mountain was doing was preparing you for the second mountain all along. And I remember I was talking with a potential client. This is just a few weeks ago, Neil, and I was sharing something. I was sharing something about believe in yourself. You know, it's one of the things that you and I talk about often on the Big Life podcast, right? The B is actually believe boldly. And I was sharing that, and I was sharing how a situation that I had, a very special moment where that idea of believing in myself was spoken into me, and it hit me as I was sharing that story, that what I thought was for me really was for me to actually pass on to others. And so a lot of what we go through in the first mountain, and the growth that takes place, and all that happens to us, that it's for us at that time, we get to realize now it's actually preparing us to actually serve others with. So we're blessed to be a blessing, and that
Yeah.
first mountain is if you want to use my analogy, it's a blessing, and it's not just for us. We're blessed to actually pass it on and to serve and help others.
And so, Robin, as you say that, I think about the success I had and that I'm having in real estate, right? And I'm like, yes, when I have success in real estate and sales and brokerage, man, that's good for me and my family, right? That's good. That keeps the lights on and the water running. But then a way for me to be a blessing to others is to show people what's possible for them, to coach them through, to walk them through, to not only on the side of home ownership or opportunities with finances from home sales, but now showing people what it looks like to create wealth for themselves. And so initially it was, hey, how many units can we move? How many trades can we take part in? To now, can I show someone else how to live this thing, how to have this thing called abundance and experience real freedom and not be slave to man, right? And so that's exactly what you're talking about, climbing that first mountain for us, only to find. And now the first mountain was good, right? And so Robin and I are not saying get off the first mountain prematurely, because there are only there's some things that can only be learned by climbing that first mountain, going through the experience, and then you approach that second mountain with a bit of knowledge, education, information, and wisdom, so then we can share it with others. And so here's our challenge. I was hoping that Robin was going to challenge, but today I guess the challenge is on me. So I am going to do for you all what has been done for me so many times. This week, here's your challenge. Take 60 minutes, 1 hour this week. Journal about where you are. And so that could be, are you on the first mountain? Are you in the valley? Or are you already starting your second climb? And so just journal, put it somewhere. We swear by journaling. And part of the reason why I love journaling, you talked about writing down our values, Robin. We as human beings, we can talk for hours, but we only want to write for minutes, right? It requires us to be very clear. If you want to clarify your thoughts, take all of that, da, 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 da. And then when it's time for you to write, you're like, oh, I don't want to write 50 sentences. Let me make this very concise. And it adds clarity. And if you're in the valley, here's what Robin and I want to challenge you with, or to say to you. Don't rush it. I have been in a valley and tried to rush my way through the valley. Let it teach you what it needs to teach you. I had to be in a valley. I had to go back to a valley because I rushed out of it, Robin. And so as someone who has done it the wrong way, wherever you are, make the most of that moment and then learn whatever you need to learn in that season.
Right on. Because the second mountain isn't just about success. It's about significance. And there is a saying that says, when you taste significance, you don't want to go back to success. And significance is more about living in a way and living a life that will outlive you. And so that's what we want for you. We want you to live a life that outlives you. And I trust that this episode serves you in that regard.
Man, so now, Robin, since I have tasted significance, I do not want to go back to the taste of success. Man, that was powerful. I love it. Robin dropping gems over here, ladies and gents, so make sure you pick them up. So if this episode has spoken to you, share it with someone who's standing at the edge of their next climb, or they're on top of mountain one or in the valley. Share this episode with them so that they can get the benefits of the knowledge that there is a second mountain.
And if you have not subscribed to the Big Life podcast, please go ahead and do so that you don't miss any future conversations like this one. Your second mountain is waiting. And trust us, trust Neal and I, the view is worth the climb.
Robin, it has been a pleasure as always. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for hanging out with us here on the Big Life Podcast. Robin and I are going to leave you like we always do. And that is that we love you. God loves you. And there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, we're right there with you. Peace.
Peace.